welcome to the final forum. This is a really kind of a momentous occasion for those of us who've been doing the campaigns, because I think if you count all the different candidates, I did a little bit of math earlier, I think this is the 4,559th Zoom forum that all the candidates combined have done. So I salute everybody's endurance in this thing. What we're hoping for tonight is to make it a little bit more loose than the average, militarized forum where people can talk to each other and we can answer your questions, and it's more of a conversational thing. Our participants tonight are Mayor Blakespear, Deputy Mayor Hinzi, Councilmember Tony Kranz. I'll be your moderator, and we also have some people behind the scenes that are helping out too. Little tiny bit about me is that I grew up here in Encinitas since I was 3 years old. I'm Catherine's campaign manager, and I'm also an admirer and a friend to each of the other candidates, so I don't claim to be unbiased, but I do come from a journalism background, and so I am interested in hearing honest, complete answers. So I'm not here just to grease it up for everybody. I just want to help moderate it and hope everybody has a good time. So what I'd like to do initially is just have each candidate introduce themselves as if they haven't already. Everybody here probably knows who everybody is, but everybody's got a minute and a half to talk about themselves. So Catherine, how about we start with you?
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Scott, for doing this, organizing this here at the very end, this last push. We have had a great campaign, and I feel really excited about what's going to happen on the 4th, and especially for the 3 candidates on this call. So thank you to all the supporters and all the people who've donated and everybody who's sign waving and everything, because everything makes a difference, and that's why you do everything. So I'm just tremendously grateful and have a full heart over all the contributions that people have made, even during this pandemic time. So my campaign the theme I would say is preserve and enhance, which is something I've had on campaign signs in the past. And it is recognizing what is so great about Encinitas and working to preserve it, and then also working to enhance it, make things even better. And what we've done since I've been the mayor in the last 4 years, working together with my city council colleagues, some of whom are on this call, and Councilmember Kranz actually has been on the council longer than I have, so he has been involved in many of these projects for the duration. But we've been really working overtime to make life better in Encinitas. So the improvements to quality of life are substantial, and some of them include putting more sand on the beaches, quieting train horns, putting in a coastal rail trail and protected bike lanes throughout the city, building a new park, beginning the very first phase of Leucadia streetscape, which is a very long time in coming, and really being committed to making it so that people are able to be outside, to walk, to go to restaurants, to have their kids bike and walk to school, to capitalize on what a tremendous city we have here in the city of Encinitas, and to preserve and enhance those things. So I'm looking forward to another 2 years, and I'm grateful for all the support. And thank you again for hosting this forum, Scott.
Thank you. Kelly, how about you?
Okay, well, my name is Kellie Hinze, and I am serving as the deputy mayor. I was appointed to this seat as a city council member when Tasha Burner Horvath was elected to higher office. So it's been just under 2 years that I've had the privilege and the opportunity to be part of our city's local government. And to me, it's been a really exhilarating experience. I think there's, year 1, there was a lot going on, but year 2 has been one of the craziest years, I think, in most of our lives. And just, attempting to find an identity as a leader during this time has been a really interesting process. I think I've grown a lot and had a little loss of innocence in some ways, but also feel very encouraged by what I see in the last couple of days in terms of young voter turnout, in terms of the energy behind this election. And it's really just, sometimes I have to shake myself because I can't believe that I'm appearing on the same ballot as, Kamala Harris and people who I think really are going to be the future of our country. And I think that those values really need to be represented all the way down to the bottom of the ballot. And so in Encinitas, I think that we're a progressive city, and we've worked really hard for that for that culture and for that status in North County. And we've shown that in many ways. We've shown it by our city's acceptance of the safe parking lot this year. We've shown it in reconfiguring a 4-lane highway that's really just meant to be for auto conveyance, that will be now serving people instead of just cars, and bringing people out of their cars into their public space to enjoy Highway 101 as a tree-lined, shady, beautiful linear park is something that I think that many people in the community are excited about. Yeah, I think that just looking back on the last several months, I have new friends, I have a new community, I have people who I never knew before this. And it's been such an amazing experience to become even closer with a lot of people that share the values and the visions that I have, and I believe that my colleagues have for the city of Encinitas. So again, just thank you to everybody who's shown up for us and who's supported us, who's waved signs on the street corner and just, waged a important battle on all the internet chat rooms where sometimes misinformation and incivility can spin out of control. So that's all I have, and I look forward to a great conversation as always.
I can tell you from my unbiased position that it's so great. Your energy is so great that you brought to the city council and to the whole group. It's been like a shot of energy. So cool on you, says the unbiased moderator. Tony, let's hear from you.
Muted there, I'm unmuted. Mr. Chatfield, thank you very much. I would like to add to Kellie's intro of herself that for me, she very definitely represents a generational change on the city council. And to me, that's one of the most critical things that we need in this community. I love this city. I moved here in 1960, grew up here, walked by Scott Chatfield's house every day to go to school, down to St. John's School. And I think he threw pickleweed at us regularly as we were going by. But in the meantime, the reality is that there are a lot of old timers that have been really kind of shocked by the growth and have come to evolve to learn to deal with it. And there are a lot of newcomers that want to just keep everything from changing. And so it's pretty important, I think, that we have some fresh set of eyes and a different approach to life that I think Kellie represents, as well as her friends and classmates and others. So very important to me. The reality of our situation is that we have been working desperately to make improvements to a built environment that has been with us for decades, coming up on centuries, for example, on the Highway 101. So we're doing everything that we can to kind of shift paradigms and make improvements to these facilities. We need new drainage. We need a ton of improvements for bike and pedestrians. We need to address issues related to our environment and our ocean, protecting our ocean. Quality of life issues are critical, and I've been working on that since I was elected in 2012. It's been a very rewarding 2 terms, and although I'm the old man on the council, I think that I still have some things to contribute. Experience in these pandemic times is very important, and we need to continue to focus on the projects that we have advanced to the point where they're now being constructed. So I look forward to being able to continue to serve my community, and it is to me a treasure, and I hope to be able to pass along to future generations an even better city than I had the opportunity to experience.
It's funny when I hear you guys talk and having worked with you. I met Catherine when Tony, you and I were working on getting Pacific View so that it didn't get sold to developers, and all the intricacies and heartache and work that go into trying to get something done. And then I hear, it's pretty common. You hear candidates going, well, we could have a stairway to the moon. Why didn't anybody think of that? And then part of me goes, be careful what you wish for, candidate, and just try to understand that you're trying to, especially like Tony, you're putting together transit guys and everything else trying to get something going on, something that seems really simple. Why can't we just build something under the railroad track? But the closer I get to it, the more I realize how complex it is. So I really salute you guys for that. The first question I have is about the pandemic. So we've been in it for several months now. And what are the most, like, with hindsight, do you have any observations or thoughts about things you wish you had done differently? And do you have a sense of where we're headed with COVID locally and where we are nationally? Catherine, do you want to start?
Sure. You know, Encinitas has been really proactive, I think, and I'm proud of the city, the leadership, and the constituents at the city, because we have been, from a very early time, really clear on trying to normalize mask wearing. So, you know, wearing a mask is something that the health professionals agree is the best thing to stop the spread. And so if we can make that something that everybody adopts, no matter when they're going out, no matter kind of what they're doing, that they feel comfortable in it, that other people feel comfortable, then we'll be able to restart our economy, and we'll be able to have kids in school, and we'll be able to join together in groups. And so I think when you look at some of the things we've done, like have banners on Highway 101 and El Camino Real, and handing out, Kelly was really involved in organizing a group of volunteers every weekend to hand out masks, having sheriffs do education, and then also just always reiterating that and setting the tone at the top. I think that that has made a big difference. And so we do have one of the lowest case rates of all cities in the county, of all 18 cities in the county. So I think that's great. It is going to go on for a while. I mean, when you listen to the experts, which I think we all do, Anthony Fauci just today was saying that it's going to be potentially the end of next year. And so, you know, those are things that we're going to be dealing with this reality for a while. So when I look back, I think one of the things that created a little bit more chaos than was preferable was the different beach cities having different beach closures. I think that's something that in some ways, I don't know if it could have been prevented because things were unrolling so quickly, but if all the beach cities in the county had had a way to communicate with each other and come up with a uniform approach, that would have been better instead of having a hodgepodge of openings and closed beaches. I think that made it difficult for us too. But other than that, I feel really proud of what the city has done. Oh, you're muted, Scott.
So in the early days, you had a plan for the beaches, and suddenly the county goes, guess what? We're going to do this beach early or do that early, and the whole city had to scramble. And there was actually a time or two when we were going to open, but we thought it was going to be 4 or 5 days into the future, and suddenly they said no, it's happening Monday, and didn't we have to sort of demur and say no, we can't be ready that quickly?
Well, it was mostly the state that was making decisions, and we have in our city we have state beaches and we have local beaches, and then most of Carlsbad is state beaches, and so all the coastal cities were reacting differently to what was required or what was recommended. And I think in some ways that created a lot of heat. There were people who wanted to go to the beach, and there were cities that wanted to stay closed longer, and it just created a lot of division at that time. But there have been a number of different things that we've dealt with in the city. We had a number of also protests, which thankfully were all peaceful, because you look around at other cities, and I'm always really mindful of what is happening in other cities, because anything that's happening in other cities could be happening here. And so as the mayor, it's really important, I think, to keep a close watch on the pulse to make sure that we're well positioned to be able to weather those things. And I talk to the sheriff captain frequently, and just to make sure and understand where they are and to make sure we're on the same page. And I think that's all part of being responsible and being a good government, local government leader.
You have to have a real level head, though, don't you? I mean, because you could just go, I just went to bed thinking this was going to happen, and now this is going to happen. So,
Well, yeah, and like many things, I'll just say that, of course, I'm one vote on a city council of 5. We have a professional staff who actually is the emergency operations center I'm not in that. So the mayor's not in the emergency operations center. That's fire chief, city manager, sheriff, others. And so decisions are always made within a group context with all the different people weighing in. And then the city council also had a couple of emergency meetings to deal with some things that were emergent. But yeah, these are definitely not decisions that one person is making.
yeah. So Kelly, you were kind of you had the beach beat that you sort of took on yourself. What's your take on the whole COVID thing, and what was it like handing out masks and things?
Yeah, I think that, like the mayor said, the trickiness of the beaches was the most difficult part, I think, in terms of a pain point for the neighbors, and also just trying to manage our tourist season extended because it started so early and now it's ended so late. And we still have, I think up until last weekend, we were still having record crowds coming down to the beach and then going to the businesses. And in some ways it's a really good problem to have because our economy didn't really slow down and our small businesses were still able to thrive. But just managing the neighborhood plus the parking lots and then the business response, it was just all of these things coming together. And also the fact that we had the red tide. And so at nighttime, we were having these crowds that were coming to see the red tide until 10 or 11 at night. And I think we did the best that we could. And I also really need to thank our professional staff because our previous city manager had retired, and Jennifer Campbell, who was the Parks Rec and Cultural Arts Department manager, stepped into the role as interim city manager, and she did an amazing job. And here she is, just managing a crisis, managing an economic fallout, and she did such a great job. And it really just gave me confidence in our professional staff that when the going gets tough, they get going. And just being able to see that and have confidence in that made me feel like, okay, I can trust them. Some of this is hard, but we're just figuring out all these different levers that we have. So yeah, I think that the response was only possible because we had so many volunteers that were willing to spend their Saturday and Sundays passing out masks to keep the beaches open. Was a great example of the community coming together and saying, you know what, it's in all of our best interest. It's in the best interest of the region to keep our beaches open because there are so few places where people could go and be outside and, feel happy. And our beaches offer that. I was reflecting on one family that I met during this time when it was so difficult for the neighborhood. I think a lot of people were very frustrated. And it was like, can't we just close everything? And I was like, yeah, can't we just close everything? And this one family I met, father had a disability and the 2 children had disabilities, and they had come to Moonlight before for an event, and they live in Menifee. And Menifee was 113 degrees on the day that I met them. And it was about 85, 87 here at Moonlight. And the father was just so grateful that there was a place that they could go where his daughters could just be free and play and be in the ocean. And he was telling me that his electric bill is $700 a month just to keep the house cool. And I just felt like, okay, we can't just hunker down and only protect ourselves. We have to figure out a way that we can steward this precious resource for all people in the region to be able to come here. And, we'll set the tone. We'll show this. We all wear masks here. The locals wear masks, even when we're walking just to and from the water. And it was really a learning experience. And I think if we could have done anything better, it was probably just have kept the parking lots open so that we didn't push so many people into the neighborhood and overwhelm the neighbors.
That was a county thing, right?
Yeah, excuse me, sorry. I wanted to just jump in and say that I think what was great about Kelly organizing the mask wearing or mask handing out was that she saw that there was a way for us to be part of the solution. So when you're in a lockdown and you're saying, well, what can I do to help? Kellie was able to harness the energy that's in our community and that she herself had to put together a program for people to be part of the solution. And it's really worth recognizing that because she really came up with that almost out of whole cloth. It was like, hey, we could do this and this needs to happen and I'm going to start it. And then it generated momentum and it kept itself going. And she was there weekend after weekend. So she really deserves some praise for doing that. Thank you, Kellie.
Thank you. That's really nice. Yeah, I think I was just seeing that spirit in the community. I was seeing it in our Main Street organizations, just getting some grant donations before the city could and giving them out to the small businesses. And I was seeing it a lot. And I was like, how can we also do that from the city's part? And so thank you. That's really nice. And it just, we're lucky that it worked out so well.
Tony, what are your experiences?
It was, this idea of a pandemic, and that the last one we had was 100 years ago was interesting. And I think there have been a number of lessons that we've learned. And one of the things that I hope we take away from this is the recognition that with climate change, there is a fairly significant chance that we will be seeing pandemics more frequently, and that we should make sure that, the things that we did well in this particular instance, we are prepared to implement as quickly as possible. And I think one of the things that we did well was we managed the beach situation. And I know that it was controversial and there were some people who thought we should wait before we open the beach. In fact, I know it was a 3-2 vote to open the beach. But there is a mental health component to this that I think is absolutely critical. And that when we closed the beach, we took away an outlet for a lot of people, both surfers, runners, swimmers. There were a whole bunch of people that just essentially had their lifestyle turned upside down. I get that everybody else who either had to work from home then, or lost their job, or kids were at home from school, that there were all sorts of impacts from this. But I think that there was that one aspect, the access to the ocean, that is something that we should continue to work to keep open in future situations like this. And I think that the next city council, of which I hope to be a part, as well as with Kellie and Catherine, we need to, once we get on the other side of the emergency orders, be sure we follow up with some plans for what to do in the future. And my hope is that the governor and that the county board of supervisors will also consider some of what we've learned throughout this and implement it, some strategies so that there isn't quite as much herky-jerkiness. That situation where surfers got the word that beaches were going to be open. We had surfers that were, climbing the fences that we had up at 6 a.m. We weren't planning to open the beaches until 8 a.m., but they weren't waiting. So it created kind of a nightmare situation where the deputies got involved. And, but that again is one of those situations where, they had the opportunity to enjoy one of their favorite pastimes, and they weren't going to wait around, crack of dawn, they were ready to go. So a lot of lessons learned, and none of this is easy. And like Kellie and Catherine, I want to salute our professional staff who have been operating an emergency operations center since late February, early March. And the director of emergency operations is our city manager, and Karen got it started, and Jennifer Campbell picked it up as the interim, and now we have our new city manager who is stepping in and filling that role, and they all play a critical part in keeping our community safe.
So Tony, you mentioned the correlation between climate change and increasing pandemics. I wasn't aware of that. Can you explain that?
Well, it's a theory that I have read some articles on. It looks like some of this stuff is climate related, and as we've had the change in climate, globally, there are opportunities for these sort of viruses to flourish, and so it's just one theory that as we continue to see climate change impact our environment, that there could be ancillary issues like more pandemics, more viruses that are have a load that is entirely different. And you know, the reality is we're nationwide, we're seeing a huge upswing in infections. We've had some record-setting days, and we are now seeing hospitals across the country that are reaching capacity and having to steer people to other medical centers for care. And this was what we initially were trying to avoid. And I think initially we did avoid it, but because people kind of let their guard down, we're finding that it's raging in the Midwest and other parts of the country. And we're still doing okay. We haven't gone to the next tier here in Southern California, but we're pretty close. And I know that there are some concerns throughout the medical community about the potential for getting into that zone where, you know, there may be hospitals that reach their capacity.
Yeah, I think I heard that we actually numerically are in the lower zone, but it's the numbers have been massaged a bit because of the rate of testing that we're doing. We get a little bit of credit for that.
Right.
So we're right on the cusp. Yeah. Okay. Did we talk to everybody about climate? Yeah, we did. Right. So I want to take a little break right now and talk about what it takes to run for city council in Encinitas. And one of the great things about Encinitas, besides the fact that it's Encinitas, is that we have a $250 cap on donations, which is completely minuscule compared to Citizens United and our neighboring cities that don't have any cap whatsoever. So I think that it's a good time to probably talk about helping these candidates with their campaigns. As we get to the end, there are still expenses, and expenses are going to come in after the election is over. And I'd like to ask Stephanie to put up the links, the donate links for each of the three candidates, because I think it would be great if we could get some more money, up to $250 per person or $500 per couple. And if you've already donated, to a certain degree, maybe you could make up the difference between what you've already donated and $250. I was thinking next time we should have like a wheel of fortune and say, you're going to donate for somebody. We go, tick, tick, Tony, Kelly, tick, tick. It stops on one of the candidates. Do you guys have anything do you want to add regarding the donations or regarding the contributions and help? No?
I would just add that my campaign is winding down. So if people are stretched thin and really want to make a contribution, that Kelly and Catherine are probably the right people to focus on. But that said, I cannot be more grateful for all of the contributions that I've had, and my supporters are what make this process of running for office bearable. So thank you to all who have contributed.
That's probably a good segue now to, oh, by the way, anyone who has questions that's in the audience, feel free to put them in chat and they're going to be relayed to us. And so you can ask those questions in relative real time. So what are your thoughts, each of you? We'll start with Catherine, on the anger and the lack of civility that's characterized this election season. It's like nothing I've ever seen. And do you have any ideas for healing the toxicity and the divisiveness that we now see in Encinitas after the election?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think about this a lot, actually, because I do hope to be reelected. You know, this is my fourth campaign, and I know that there are people who don't vote for me in every campaign. This season feels different, and I think it's certainly because of the top of the ticket. I mean, the tone that's set right now is just nationally is extremely divisive, and it's different than from the other four campaigns I've been involved in. Because the mayor runs every 2 years, which is why I've had these campaigns, and I was on the city council for 2 years at first. But you know, being able to say that, and to own that I'm a mayor for everybody is really important to me, because I don't see myself as being a mayor for only those who supported me, or only those who are part of a certain party, or only those who believe in climate change, or whatever the particular issue is. It really is being a mayor for everybody. that's important. And so how do you foster that? I mean, that's the question that you're getting at. And I think being able to actively listen to people, to create forums and environments where people feel heard and where you can actually sit down and try to problem solve in public, and in a way that is very transparent, and also that can help establish facts. I think everything, the conspiracy theories and the disinformation and misinformation, it really stems from not having an agreed set of facts. And I think this has been something that's been very difficult for our community when it comes to housing, and has become an issue in the homelessness discussion too. But just some basic facts about the fact that upzoning is required under state law, that's something that it's not an option that we just say no to it, because it is a fact what state law is. And so being able to answer people's questions so that they understand the nuances of the state law, and they understand what it is that is an option and what isn't an option. Like, you can't just go count all your accessory dwelling units that exist and say, okay, we're good. You know, that this has to be new housing because it's driven toward the new population of people in our state, and every city has to do its part. And I think when you can contextualize things, and that's always the case for me too. I'm someone who evolves and learns and recognizes when my position or my feeling is something that is really unsupportable by the facts or by the realities of the laws that surround us. And so being able to put that all in context and explain the policy reasons behind it, I think that's a really important part of it. So, you know, to get to the nut of your question, what to do about the toxicity and the misinformation, I think it's to open your arms up and to say, we want to have a big conversation, and we want to have everyone part of the community, and to continue to model that civility and the inclusiveness, and not become bitter and jaded and angry yourself. And I think that's the work of it, is to do this and to still be able to own those feelings that recognize that we all have so much in common with each other, so much more than our differences. And that's also the case when we're thinking about Americans. I mean, all of us who can see the other as being so different, being able to identify what we hold in common. And so that, I think, we'll be working on that. I plan to be working on that. I invite my opponent specifically, but then the other two opponents to be part of the process, to bring forward their best ideas, to know that they'll be listened to and heard, and to work with us to come up with solutions.
Okay, Kellie?
Yeah, I think about this a lot as a new politician, because I used to think, oh, it's politicians that get this negativity and we're always in the middle of it. And I don't think that's actually the case. I think everybody right now is a target by somebody else. And in my other job, I work at a small business, and when COVID hit, we started having all these new regulations where there were only 3 people allowed in at a time, and you had to put your mask on, and there was this whole protocol that we had to go through. And I got very similar pushback from just customers in the store. And so, when I feel bad for myself and I'm like, oh, I'm getting so much negativity, or I'm at the center of so much negativity, it's, nurses are getting it, doctors are getting it, people that work at the grocery store, they're getting it too. It's everybody is experiencing it. But I think that the conversation is so obvious when it happens around the politicians, because we are visible. And so, every time that one of these Facebook threads unfolds and you read these things, it's so easy to get pulled into feeling like you want to battle, or you want to make your point, or you want to be right about something. But it's sort of like you've got to reorient yourself and say, there's a whole world of people who are not part of this battle right here on this comment thread, and they're looking for a leader too. And they also need to know what's at stake here in this election. And so I think the way forward is really in that, like the mayor said, just having to model that ourselves. And, I feel the impulse to be a keyboard warrior and say, you're being mean to my friend, you couldn't be calling her this name. But I have to stand back a little bit and say, what's my own personal set of ethos around this? I'm not going to name call anybody. I'm not going to push a conspiracy theory and say, I heard through somebody else that this happened. And I think it is important in the months following this election that we're holding one another to those same kind of standards too. Things that I've thought about, some people have been really mean. Some people have, in my opinion, burned a bridge that it's going to be really hard to repair. And so when I want to work with everybody, but I think that there's some basic ground rules that we all need to agree to. And it's that we're not going to name call, and we're going to be talking about the issues rather than something in the past. And I invite people who have been outwardly not supportive of my campaign to continue to reach out to me and work on the issues that I know are not going away after the election. So that's the tone I'm hoping to set. And I hope that our whole country can move past this.
One of the things I notice is that it's kind of a relatively new development, at least in terms of my experience, is the sort of blanket negation of let's just say you hypothetically, Kelly, where you're talking about, well, we can find the common ground, we can find out what we agree on and things like that. And I'm just going, how do you do that in the face of just nuclear, you suck?
I think it's really difficult because that whole nuclear you suck is designed to suck you in and get you to be in a fight or be in a conflict. And part of what I've learned on this campaign is that I've been making a lot of phone calls and calling people who, aren't on Facebook all the time or don't participate in these groups that all of us do. And they really know very little about this local race and what each candidate stands for. And it's almost reassuring in some ways, like, oh, there's a world outside of this head-to-head combat on the keyboards that's happening. And I think it's really worth just broadening the lens to the whole of the city and not just those of us that have our entrenched opinions.
I think it's also important to have your own North Star and have your own integrity and say, is kind of like what you said, is this something that projects my integrity and what I stand for, and then the rest of it kind of just falls by the wayside. And when the war is over, you're still standing with your integrity and your reputation intact. Yeah. Tony, what about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the old saying, politics ain't beanbag, is very true. It's a rough and tumble, sport-like event for a lot of people. It is a popularity contest. And so what people have, I think, because of the way the leadership at the national level have behaved, that instead of trying to make your candidate more popular, there has been a significant focus on trying to make those who are running against your candidate less popular. And that's not uncommon. It's a part of politics, but the way I've experienced it in this particular race has been a little bit worse than any of the others. And my first campaign in Encinitas was in 2010. I lost. And that's the thing about these elections, is that there's a winner and there are losers, or at least that's the way it feels. And from where I sit, anybody who doesn't come out with the most votes is not a loser, because they advanced several issues and the conversation, and they brought some experience and some values and some ideas to the table. So I remember that first loss. I went sulking to my big sister Rose, who suggested that what I really ought to do is work with to explore the old Venn diagram approach and look at where do the circles overlap, and try and find members of the city council who will focus on those areas where we overlap and we have shared ideas, and not focus so much on those areas where we don't overlap. And so I'm going to encourage anybody who isn't successful, doesn't have the most votes in this particular campaign, that they would reach out. I'm interested in talking to them and looking again at those areas where the circles overlap. For example, Alex has a strong interest in Julie Thunder as well, in putting the railroad tracks in a trench. And I share that. I really want to do that. So maybe what we can do after the election is over is we can get together and talk about what I've learned over the last 8 years as a representative to North County Transit District and currently the chair. the experience has been tremendous. And I think that, you know, once we all get past this initial, you know, get the election behind us, I look forward to being able to work with anybody in the city, but especially the candidates that are currently on the ballot to try and advance those areas that we have a common interest in.
Well, you kind of anticipated my next question about trenching the tracks, because that's almost like the idea du jour, which is like, hey, what if we trench the tracks? Carlsbad's working on it. Solana Beach already did it. How about that? Vote for me. Can you kind of elucidate on the whole complex situation about trenching our tracks?
Well, and you know, I mean, that's one of the things about politics is you look for ideas that might set you apart from the folks you're running against, and you know, frankly, I have not talked about trenching the tracks, but that's in part because I have spent a lot of time on the issue of trenching the tracks, and I realize that at this point in time, the city of Encinitas has some pretty significant challenges in terms of trying to advance the idea of trenching the tracks. And so if it's at all possible, I would like to share my screen. I don't know if people can see that, but the gist of it is this is a PowerPoint presentation that was given in February of 2006. The city of Encinitas has invested significant money in studying Leucadia trenching. And so a couple of things, I'm going to skip through these slides and go right to the pictures, because pictures are, I think, very helpful. This is the plan that was explored in the aughts, in 06. It was also brought up previous to that. But this is looking at putting the trench through Leucadia. You can see right there is a, you know, there's the train coming down the tracks, and there's a bridge over that trench. And here's Vulcan, and here's 101, and that was idea number one. Alternative number two. That's a big and ugly thing right there. But it was one of the ideas that came along as a less expensive alternative. And one of the challenges that the city of Encinitas has is that our railroad corridor is relatively narrow. So it's not going to be easy to put a trench in. Unlike Carlsbad, which has much more width to work with in order to put their trench in. And then another kind of interesting idea was that Leucadia Boulevard would terminate at a roundabout, and that cars, there would be two couplets. One would be down here at Jason, and the other one would be at Europa. So if you wanted to go north on 101 and you were on Leucadia Boulevard, you would hang a right on Vulcan, and then you would make this left turn. And so these are all ideas that the city has explored. And in the end, it came down to the question of, is that where we want to spend our money? Do we want to continue these designs? And the answer was no. Those city councils decided, you know what, we appreciate the study. We're going to spend our resources somewhere else. And as a matter of fact, that's not long after this, there was a conversation about how do we make improvements to the 101, and from that came the streetscape. So there have been significant resources invested in the streetscape, and I get that the candidates are basically saying, let's scrap streetscape, it's too much money, and put it into the trenching of the tracks. And you know, that's the other part, is that Carlsbad is spending significant money to advance their planning on putting their trench in. And the construction of that project, if all goes well, isn't scheduled until, you know, they think they might be ready to build it in 2030. And the reality is, we don't have the time. We've got a 101 corridor that has big gaps in sidewalks, and, you know, there are other bicycle and pedestrian issues that the streetscape is intended to address. And so ultimately, I think city councils decided prior to my arrival on the council that they were going to focus on the streetscape, and city has spent a significant amount of money to advance the plans, and we're going to start construction here soon. So the idea of trying to shift the money for streetscape over to this trench, I just think for me is just not something that is a good use of the city's resources. And while I appreciate that, Julie and Alex are trying to make life better for all of us here in Leucadia. I would love to see that happen, but until we have more expendable resources to pursue this sort of project, I don't think it's in the city's best interest. So, and I think a lot of people in Leucadia recognize that the cost is prohibitive. And so, I don't know, other than the fact that people would love to see the train in a trench so that it didn't have to sound its horns. I don't see it as a seminal issue for a whole lot of people. People want to be able
Tony,
to cross.
What's the cost of it that in 2006?
In 2006, it was about, I believe, 180 million. I think that it's much more expensive now. The Carlsbad Trench is about a $300 million project. And the number that I've heard to trench the tracks through Leucadia is about $500 million. And, one of the things that would happen as part of that construction would be there would be what they call a shoe fly track that would have to be built so that the train could run through town while the trench was being constructed. And it would probably go in the northbound lane of Highway 101 as part of this project. Maybe it would go on Vulcan, but essentially the way they would have to construct this, the train, it would likely have to be outside of the corridor. So there are a whole bunch of challenges. On the east side of the track is a 12-inch high-pressure gas line. On the west side of the track is a 24-inch reinforced concrete pipe for stormwater. So, the costs of this sort of project are significant, and it's what has kept the city, previous councils, from really advancing this. So, maybe one day we'll be able to continue to explore this and maybe advance it. But from where I sit, I don't see that that's a good use of our resources.
Yeah, I think if you don't mind, I'd like to just make a couple of comments. So one of the great things about Tony is that he digs up studies like this. He does this as part of his way of doing research on things, and I love it because you get to see a picture like this from 2006 that I've never seen in my almost 6 years in elected office. And it's also, what's also interesting about it is that to me, I just go back to recognizing there's a phrase that is, politics is the art of the possible. And so when we're making decisions like, yeah, that picture right there, when I'm thinking about what is possible, what do I want to be doing with my short time? All of us are in these elected seats for a short time. And how do we want to use our energies? And I feel like personally, I want to do things. I want to do actual things that will forward the ball. And so if we spent, even $10 million on just the next study, and getting some engineering possibilities and having people go out there and figure out how would it take to build this. That just does not seem like a good use of money to me. I would much rather get Leucadia streetscape finished because that will provide real improvements and enhancements for people in Leucadia, for people all throughout the city, and also for all the businesses that are in Leucadia. And so you look at something like that, and in a revenue unconstrained world, it seems great. But when you hear what Tony's saying about what's on both sides of the tracks, and also the reality of when, like, even Carlsbad would be able to do theirs, which is 10 years at least away, and they've been working on it and have put millions of dollars into it, it really, it makes it so that it's pretty clear that that's just not feasible for us.
Yeah, and I had this disc. It was on a CD, and it included the sign-in sheets for the meetings that were held, the community workshops. And I was, I found the one that had my signature on it. I remember attending these, and so it was, to me, I was pretty excited about the idea of getting this done. But here's a little look at, the way the corridor is divided, and the challenges that we would have with the topography, the difference between the elevation on the Vulcan side versus the Highway 101 side. Here are, they are exploring some traffic issues. Let me get back here to the costs, if I might. There it is, 150 million for alternative one. Here is, yeah, let's see. This is alternative two, 88 million. Alternative two was the on bridges. And that's been known to be less expensive, but to me is just a non-starter. I am not interested in ruining the view shed in that way. It also means that just the sound of the locomotives and the trains going by would impact more people, both east and west. And then the third option is 160 million. This was the one with the couplets that are, around about it at Vulcan and Leucadia Boulevard. And so those are the costs. But Carlsbad's Trench is estimated at this time to be about a $300 million project. I think a lot of people know that Carlsbad has developed the heck out of their community, and they have more money than God. They have resources. So they are moving forward with their planning. They've also received some grants, in part because they started the process with their own money. And so, and when you look at what Solana Beach was able to accomplish, that was pretty amazing that they got that done. But keep in mind that back when that was built, it was also those were the days of the earmarks. So there was the opportunity to direct money. The environment that we find ourselves in now is very grant focused. So we're competing with other communities around the country for federal dollars and around the state for state dollars. So it's not easy when you have a city like Encinitas, which doesn't have a high percentage of folks that are on public assistance. And so a lot of the money for these kind of projects go to those disadvantaged communities. So it's just a lot of challenges. I'm not saying that I'm going to give up on trying to find a way to make it happen, but my focus has always been on streetscape and trying to get that finished. And I should add more safe, legal pedestrian crossings. Knowing that the tracks are going to stay at grade for quite some time, we need to continue our push to get more safe and legal crossings. I'm very excited about the one going in at El Portal. It's going to be transformational for those folks who are that live in Leucadia, they're looking to go downtown. They now have, once that's complete, they'll have an option to do something other than driving their car. And so it'll be a big deal. Sorry I took so long, and I will now put myself on mute for the next 10 minutes.
That was really educational. I kind of share Catherine's appreciation for the fact that you unearthed these scrolls and found these other versions of it. Kelly, I don't want to eschew you from this. Did you have any comments on the trenching before we move on?
All that I would add is that many of the same problems that we face as a community would still exist, even if the rail was trenched. So you'd still have a 4-lane highway that is not navigable to walk across if you're, in a wheelchair or a child or somebody who has vision difficulties. So streetscape to me has never been this or, it's always been, we have this highway that we've got to manage and it needs a lot of improvements if it's going to be community oriented. So even if we did manage to trench the tracks, Vulcan and Highway 101 still need a lot of improvement and attention.
Okay, well, we're running out of time here. I had 2 other questions. I'm going to combine them, and it'll be like jumping hurdles for you guys. But maybe we can start with you, Kelly. I was going to ask, what are the rewards and the frustrations of being on the city council? And what do you think the greatest misconceptions are about your role? And as if that wasn't enough, if you're able to continue in your role on city council, what are your plans? What would you like to accomplish?
Well, I'll try to be quick on that first part. I think the greatest misconception is that we get paid a lot of money. And that's not true. I always say it's a full-time job with part-time pay. So it is really tough to manage my own expenses and lifestyle, and know that I have to do council and find another career if I am elected in the next 4 years. What else? What's fun about it? Well, I just learned so much. You know, it's fascinating, and I think the art of politics is just finding out the way that things get done, and you're pushed in the direction that your community wants you to go, and you follow that, and you try to figure out things that others haven't figured out before. So just the learning is amazing, and what I hope to accomplish if elected in the next 4 years is to see through the Leucadia streetscape, to see a crossing in northern Leucadia, to see our community just feel comfortable leaving their cars at home and enjoying their bikes and walking around for a weekend or just their trips to school, and just keeping our community on track to be the safe, lovely paradise that it is.
Cool. Catherine?
Yeah, it's a pretty profound question, really, and I think that there's just such a tremendous honor in being chosen by your peers, by all of the citizens, to represent them. So to really recognize that and internalize that, and know that you carry their hopes and their wishes for how to make a better world forward into the arena, as Roosevelt said, you know, in the arena, that we're able to make a change and make a difference. And I think the most satisfying part of the job is being able to do that, is when we do take a challenge and we make it better, even though in many ways the changes that we're doing are always small, and sometimes they're even symbolic, but I feel very proud of us being able to mobilize the community and give voice to the community will that we do more to address homelessness. And getting the homeless parking lot up and going was very divisive for our community, and I still hope to be able to knit it back together around that topic. But being able to make that change and get something like that available for our residents who need it, people who need help, and not have them all over the streets in their car, to me, that was really a proud moment, and I also feel a lot of pride and a lot of satisfaction in being able to do these infrastructure projects, because in the big picture it can seem so obvious, like, well, why wouldn't we make it easier to bike and walk? Like, obviously that should happen and it should be easy to do, but in reality it's not easy, and that's because of the issues around prioritizing money, but also because whenever you're reconsidering how you use public space, it's just inherently divisive. And so having the community support, council, professional staff, other agencies that help us fund it and organize it, like SANDAG and Caltrans and NCTD, having all those partnerships work to actually create something. I think when we do things is when I feel that we are our best, and also we are fulfilling what residents want, because, you know, nobody elects people to just really like sit on the bench. I mean, maybe some people do. They really have a clear vision that they want somebody to do almost nothing, but just to make sure that things don't go down the tubes. But I think a lot of people want their elected representatives to embody their greatest hopes and to be those people who can help forward things and make a better world. And so that phrase of think global, act locally, think globally, act locally is really true for us. And I think we live that every day, because we are making those changes when it comes to the climate action plan and biking and walking and infrastructure improvements and helping those who need it in vulnerable communities. And that pursuit of equity and a more egalitarian world is the thing that gives me the greatest hope and the greatest satisfaction. And it's also those are the same things that I'll be working on in the next term.
And okay, you're gonna stay the course of progress that you're doing right now. Yeah. Tony?
You know, it's been an interesting experience working with the public, working with the professional staff, working with other elected officials at an agency like both NCTD and SANDAG. Everybody's got a little different interest. Railroad issues having to do with the low sand corridor, which runs through our city, are not high priority items for the city of Vista, San Marcos, and Escondido. So it's a challenge to navigate the regionalness of some of the decisions that we make. So, but in terms of locally, I did just today put up a blog post, which has a beautiful rendition of one of my favorite songs called Leucadia. And I asked Peter Sprague, the great jazz guitarist who lives here in Leucadia, to cover a song that was written and produced and performed by an old high school friend of mine, Diana Monzeglio. And the reason I asked Peter to do that is because when the pandemic hit, he had to pivot and needed internet connection. So he tried with the various choices, AT&T and Cox, and was making no progress. And so he reached out to me, and I was able to put him in touch with somebody at Cox who worked with him to, draw pictures and say, okay, if you do this and that, we can connect you to this telephone pole right here, which has super duper high speed stuff. And you could then be Mr. Pandemic YouTube channel guy. And so it was really heartwarming when that happened. And Peter dug his own trench to put a conduit in to make that work. But being able to connect the two and to solve his problem is kind of what I live for. And there have been a number of examples of having the opportunity to solve problems over my 2 terms of service. There have been some situations where I wasn't able to resolve issues, and it's frustrating. And sometimes I think we should make changes in order to be able to resolve these particular issues, but it doesn't always work that way. So, and that's the other part of this, is that some people, when you're elected, think that you've just become like a Chicago alderman, and that in the old days of Chicago politics, all you had to do is go, grease somebody's palm a little bit and you could get your stuff done. And it doesn't work that way. Staff doesn't do things that the council hasn't directed. So, the opportunity to move in and make things happen kind of on the QT, it just does not exist. And then, for my future efforts, I really want to focus on the El Camino Real corridor. We've kind of advanced the Leucadia streetscape to a really important point. We're continuing to focus on ways to make the corridor a better neighbor. And I won't take my foot off the throttle there. But I think that it's also time to address some issues related to the El Camino Real corridor that are long overdue. So starting with basic fundamental planning and community engagement on ways that we could make that area safer for pedestrians and bicyclists, and at the same time recognizing that part of our city is a really important economic engine, so we don't want to mess things up. But that there is a stretch of that street that was planned by the county, and it wasn't planned very well. And so the sooner we can really focus on ways that we can make some changes that would improve the safety for walkers and bikers, I think we will be better off. So that and the circulation element are going to be pretty high profile for me.
Sounds like the 3 of you have your work cut out for you, hopefully, if you're reelected. And I think you've each sort of intimated that no matter who gets elected, you're going to be wanting to work with people who are your opponents and their supporters to try to bring people together more and get more done so that we can find more common ground. I think
and I would like to add to that my nature is to be active. I got involved in the city business before I was an elected official, and when I become an unelected official, or when I become unelected and I go back to being a citizen, I will not stop my advocacy for things that I think are going to make my city better. And so no matter what happens next week, you can count on me staying involved, and hopefully, I'm successful and I do get the opportunity to serve another term, but I will be involved no matter what.
So that's going to wrap it up. Does anybody have any final thoughts? I thought this was amazingly informative. This is my favorite forum yet. Okay.
Oh,
Catherine,
the one thing, yeah, thank you. The one thing, thank you for doing this, Scott, and thank you to everybody who's joining us. The one thing that I was thinking about as the others were speaking that I wanted to mention is that I think it is really important who it is, who sits at the table. I mean, who is in these seats? It's a really important because those are the things that are brought forward in the public dialogue, and we're able to prioritize and move our community in certain directions. And so I do find it very satisfying to help fill the pipeline and to be actively looking for people. And it's related to who serves in elected office, but also things like our wastewater boards, our city commissions. And I just really want to encourage anybody who on the Friday night before the election is here with us today, the 22 of you who are here, to think about being involved in official capacities, to apply for commissions and to raise your hand. You know, whenever I'm talking to youth groups, which I was doing a group of second graders just this week, and one of my messages that I'm always communicating is to lean in to leadership positions, because if you're outside throwing stones, you're not nearly as effective at making the changes that you want as if you go through the trial by fire of running or raising your hand to be on a commission and sitting in those seats yourselves and weighing all the different values and having to make decisions. So we need good people. My mom always says she would say to me when I was a kid, there's always room at the top for the best. And so I want to encourage everybody to get involved. I mean, you notice that in all three of our races, there's only one opponent, you know, and that's it really does make you, it's interesting, right? Why is it that only one person is running? Why don't we have 10 people running for every seat every time? And part of it is the barriers to entry that come with running. But we also just need people who are willing to say yes, to say, I'll do it. I want to do it.
That's great. Any other final thoughts from Kelly or before we say goodnight?
I would like to point out my bee friend here over my shoulder is a photograph by Morgan Mallory from 2016. Morgan and I both love bees, and I miss Morgan tremendously. He did pass away, and so it's fun for me to be able to enjoy his photography. He gave this to me as a memento for passing our urban ag ordinance, which allowed beekeeping in Encinitas. So I miss Morgan.
Kelly?
Yeah, I think I would just echo both what Tony said and the mayor, in that once you go through one campaign, I don't know that I could do this again. And so I'm very happy if I'm elected to do it for 4 years, but I really think that, you know, I just 2 months before I was appointed, I never considered it before. And I think it, you know, does take a special person who wants to do it. But also, as the mayor says so often, there's so many different ways to lead. And so I just encourage folks to really take it seriously. Like, please consider running for a seat or taking part in one of the commissions and just seeing how the city works, because you know, I think the future of democracy is that it's more people and more roles, and really breaking down that barrier between us and they when you talk about the government, and saying we as part of the government. So that, and yes, if I'm not elected, I'm not going anywhere either. So I'll still be pounding my fists at the table and wanting to see our city move in a direction that I've been advocating for a long time. So thank you, Scott, for hosting tonight, and Stephanie and Nick and Katie and everybody who made tonight possible as our last big forum.
Yeah, I'm glad this was the last one, because we're all tired and we're all waiting for Tuesday. But you know, once again, I got to tell you, as somebody who's lived my whole life here, and who's completely unbiased, I think when you talk about special people, I think you guys are special people, really special people. And I think this is by far the most cohesive, forward-thinking, and able to get things done city council I have ever experienced. And, you know, I know a lot of people are going to argue with me, but I'm unbiased, so I'm right. So thank you all. Let's say goodnight.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Vote.
Yes, vote.
You haven't voted yet, vote.
I know that all my friends and I, we've talked about it multiple times over the years. We'll never forget when Diana took the floor with her 12-string guitar and blew us all away with this song that she had written. She couldn't have been any older than maybe 16 years old when she wrote it. So it is like the honor of my life to be able to sing this in Diana's memory and for our town, Leucadia.
the day. I left there with a friend of mine. I'm going back alone. It's all right now, I'm finally going home. I'm going to Leucadia, town I love. Skies above are blue. I'm gonna sing my love song all day long about you. We're known as a surfer's town. There's beacons and Grandview, where you still can smell the summer morning dew. People come to buy antiques and maybe stay the day in the shady little mellow town along the way. I'm talking about Leucadia, town I love. Skies above are blue. I'm gonna sing my love song all day long about you. I'm talking about Leucadia, town I love. Skies above are blue. I'm gonna sing my love song all day long about you. We're known as a surfer's town. There's beacons and Grandview, where you still can smell the summer morning dew. People come to buy antiques and maybe stay the day in the shady little mellow town along the way. I'm talking about